Welcome to WordWise, where we delve deeply in the Word of God, discover what it means, and how to apply it to our lives. Today we're continuing in the series of faith and doubt and how the Bible handles those, particularly how Jesus handled those, and these divine appointments we're seeing Jesus keeping with various people. Today it's a familiar passage. It's Jesus with his disciples in a boat on the Sea of Galilee when a storm hits. It's in all of the Gospels, and the passage we'll be looking at today is Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through 25. And it's a fascinating look at faith and how Jesus interacts with his disciples on the question of their faith. So if you'd read with us Luke 8, verses 22 through 25.
One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down for a nap. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water, and they were in real danger. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown!" When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. Suddenly the storm stopped and all was calm. Then he asked them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were terrified and amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "When he gives a command, even the wind and waves obey him."
As we begin, just a few reminders that, as always, context is key, and this is an important context moment when Jesus and his disciples are crossing from Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee to the other side of this area to conduct some ministry. But this would have been home waters, home turf for several of these disciples, for they were fishermen, quite familiar with this area. Peter and his brother Andrew, James and John, most likely were based in Capernaum and had fished these waters on a regular basis. So they're quite familiar with that part of the Sea of Galilee. And the setting is kind of important too, the geography. Some of you may know that that area is prone to sudden and violent storms, squalls that can blow up very quickly, unexpectedly, and can really cause some major problems. So that's the setting and the context in which we study this passage. And it's so fun for me to notice the little details. For example, Jesus and his disciples go in this boat, and what does Jesus decide to do as they're going across the Sea of Galilee? He takes a nap. Once again endorsing that God approves of naps. So if you're used to a Sunday afternoon nap, that is of the Lord, and you should continue to do it. Jesus endorses the concept of taking a nap. When you get the opportunity, napping is a good thing. And I love the fact that we get that little detail. It's in the Gospel of Mark as well, that Jesus lays down to take a rest. He physically needs to rest and sleep, and that's a good thing. When you're given the opportunity to do so, when your friends are rowing the boat, when your friends are experienced fishermen navigating, and they know this area quite well, you, the Lord of the universe, the King of creation, can take a break and allow your physical self, your human body, to rest. For again, Jesus is fully God, yes, but he's also fully human. And we see both of those realities in this passage. And I love that the Son of God, who is King of the universe and master of the wind and the waves, is also fully human in Jesus, and he needs and chooses to take physical rest and takes the opportunity to take a nap. So I love that little detail that's there that Luke provides, that Mark provides, that all the gospel writers want you to make sure you know that Jesus is at peace. He isn't worried. He isn't concerned. Even as the storm begins to blow up, even as the wind increases and the waves get bigger, Jesus doesn't wake up. It doesn't wake him up at all. He's so at rest. He's so trusting in God the Father and the reality of who he is as God the Son, as well as Messiah, that he's not worried at all. In fact, the disciples have to wake him up. Now keep in mind, experienced fishermen, at least four of them were experienced fishermen, they get terrified. They are greatly afraid by the situation. The storm is so violent, so sudden, the waves are so big, the wind is blowing, and experienced fishermen get nervous. And beyond nervous, they get afraid, they get anxious, to the point where they have to wake Jesus up. They have to wake him up. In the Gospel of Mark, we're told that they wake him up and they basically accuse him of not caring about them. In this account, in Luke, we just see that they're pointing out to him, we could drown. Like, this is getting seriously bad right now. We could drown. They wake him up with some degree of urgency, and they're afraid, and they desperately want his help. Now, that's a good instinct, to go to God when the winds are blowing and the waves are increasing. Of course, that's what we need to do, is turn to God. But sometimes we wait too long, and we wait till that fear has taken over, till the anxiety has increased to a high level. So perhaps they waited too long to wake up the Lord, but they wake Jesus up, and I love what Jesus does. He doesn't rebuke them, he rebukes the wind and the waves. Did you notice that? We're told by Luke that Jesus rebukes the waves and the wind, and they respond by immediately calming. And the wind stops blowing and the waves stop waving, and there's calm. Instantaneously, they obey. Jesus, as Son of God, is Lord of creation, and so he is able to command the creation, and it obeys. He rebukes the wind and waves, we're told. He doesn't rebuke his followers. He doesn't rebuke the disciples. In fact, he turns to them, and he says, "Where is your faith?" He doesn't yell at them. He doesn't rebuke them. He doesn't criticize them. He just asks them a pretty simple question, indicating that they have faith. They've just lost touch with it. They've misplaced it. It's like those important car keys or that phone or that important little paper that you don't remember where you put it. That's kind of the disciples in this situation. They have faith. They just haven't activated it. They haven't chosen to use it. See, faith is a choice. Having faith and choosing to trust and choosing to act out of faith and respond out of faith, that's a choice. And it's like a muscle that they're not using. They haven't activated it. They haven't chosen to use it. Instead, they've made another choice. They've chosen fear. Fear is also a choice. Now, it often feels like that's just our default, so it doesn't feel like a choice, but it is. It is a choice to let yourself be afraid and to let yourself go deeper into that anxiety and that fear. And in this case, there's legitimate reasons for it. The wind and waves were pretty significant. They were terrified, and they continued to give in to that choice of fear, make that choice over and over again of being afraid. And they weren't making the choice to have faith. They weren't making the choice to trust God in the midst of this and turn to God that they had right there with them. They were kind of waiting too long to do that, perhaps. So Jesus is just asking them, where is their faith? In the Gospel of Mark, he basically says, are you afraid? Have you just given into that fear and not turned to faith, but turned to fear? He's indicating that it's a choice. And as they walk with Jesus and as they learn more about him, hopefully they'll make that choice a little sooner. Hopefully they'll make that choice a little faster and make that an intentional choice to trust Jesus, to go in faith to him before anything else. The disciples marvel at this situation. They still quite don't know who Jesus is, and they're kind of afraid of what they've just experienced, the awe, the reverence, the fear that's there. That's a good kind of fear. It's fear of the Lord. They just have never experienced this before, that someone could command creation like that and it would instantaneously obey. They've seen a lot from Jesus, but this is the first time they've seen this level of power exercised. So they're a little overwhelmed, I would say. And they kind of turn to each other and kind of speculate about who this Jesus really is. And they'll learn for sure, and they'll commit to him as Messiah, as Son of God. But it's going to take a while. And they have to learn over and over again through his amazing ministry, miracles, and signs, just who Jesus is. But we know, on this side of the cross and the resurrection, we know, as we get to read about his ministry, we know who Jesus is. But yet, how often do we forget as well? How often do we not give in to that reality of who Jesus is? We so often go it alone, and we forget sometimes to make the choice to have faith, to walk by faith, not by sight. We so often choose to let the anxiety begin, and the anxiety to spiral, and the fear, and the discouragement, and the disillusionment, and so many other things. We allow those to grow, and we choose to give in to those more and more and more instead of faith. So brothers and sisters, I remind you that faith is a choice, that Jesus will empower us to make that choice, and that faith is not the absence of doubt, it's the presence of trust. So each and every time you choose to trust God, you're making that choice, you're strengthening that faith muscle, and you will have a much easier time down the road as you make that pattern, as you consistently make those choices to trust him and to walk by faith, not by sight. So dig into the Word of God, learn the Word of God, and apply the Word of God. And thank you for joining us for WordWise.